All right, ladies and gents, welcome to another student interview. I'm with Henry. Henry, I think let's get started by just discussing a little bit how long you've been in the agency space, because I've known you for a long time and I know you've been in a lot of programs and you've done a lot. So how long have you been in the space and what made you get into agency world in the first place?
So I've been in the agency space, I would say at least 3 years, 3 to 4 years. I started while I was in college because I just wanted to make some extra money, and I realized that I could do it without having to get a job and restraining my like getting a 9 to 5 and all that. So I kind of just appreciated that type of lifestyle. So I thought I would go for it because why not? Um, and also like I wanted to like help out my family, all that idea of being able to support other people around you. So it all aligned pretty well in that as well. So I decided to start like 4 years ago, and yeah, it's been a long ride, but a good one.
Amazing. And I'm sure, just like with everyone, when you were debating on starting, you would have seen that there's a lot of other online business models because it sounds like you didn't fall
Hmm.
in love with an agency. You fell in love with all the things of starting a business online, being able
Yeah,
to travel, being able to make money, set your own time, all of these things. So I assume at the same time you were looking into drop shipping, FBA. I mean, there's a million
yeah,
different other options, right?
yeah.
So what made you choose the agency space specifically out of all of the others?
So I actually the first business I wanted to start was FBA, right? I
Okay.
it was upon luck, right? Not luck, but I happened to find a video about FBA on YouTube, and that's what started my journey in business. I saw it as okay, this is cool. I could make money easily. It's not really easily, but I could make
Yeah.
money, whatever. And I was really up to the point of getting my first product to ship to Amazon and all that. But I realized I had to spend $7,000 to get started. And I didn't have that kind of money at the time. So I said, okay, I can't do this. And then someone told me about drop shipping, and I said, okay, let me try drop shipping. I started a store, I built it, I did everything. And it was when I was running ads that I said I like running ads. And that's just at the same time that the Ty Lopez era of like courses and SMMA and all that was starting. So I kind of got sucked into, I saw that ad and I said, okay, I could actually do this for other people instead of myself. So I said, okay, let me just go and see how that works out. And that's how my agency life started. Like I realized that was the probably the best, the most viable um, model for me, right? Because I didn't have the money and I didn't really like to. The way I started trading was I was selling products to people that like products I hadn't seen, touched, or made sure were good in any way, and just selling them to people. I didn't see the value in that.
Got it. And did you have any successful stores? Like, what was the your biggest month as far as revenue goes? Because I actually didn't know that you did drop shipping before.
Yeah, no, I honestly stopped it as soon as I realized I could do ads out for other people. I just dropped the business.
Okay.
Like
And how
it took
long?
me like 2 months. I ran it for 2 months. I said, yeah, I don't like this. I want to go to run ads for people. I like running ads. It was
Okay.
a very fast change. Yeah.
Yeah. And in those 2 months when you were learning drop shipping and doing ecom, did you like buy any courses or was it pretty much just, creating a
I
Shopify
bought
account?
I bought one course by Adam Reed, like a very old
Okay.
course. Yeah, like in Udemy or something. Yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah,
All right. It's funny that a lot of us seem to have followed like a very similar path because I never actually went the FBA route, but my story starts with drop shipping, right? Aside from other
hmm,
things. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that a lot of the skills that you learn there can be transferred. And that's a
yeah,
really valuable point that I think most people miss, which is, I mean, you've done FBA sort of, you've done
yeah,
drop shipping sort of. Would you agree that in the agency world, with your business now, you've learned the most amount of skills out of all those different businesses?
definitely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to learn. Yeah, yeah, I
everything.
have. Yeah, everything.
And I think that's what makes the agency world so beautiful because it's the only business where you can learn, hiring, firing, culture, operations, sales, marketing, customer relationships, like the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah,
Um, cool. So obviously you have some drop shipping and FBA experience. So I would assume that's kind of why when you started, you made sure, okay, I'm going to go the ecom niche, right?
yeah, yeah. And I mean,
And
if I'm
yeah,
honest, it took a while for me to get to decide ecom. So when I started, I said I want to do ecom, but I didn't really know the agency space enough to say I can choose ecom. So I went
Okay.
through like multiple niches. I had a business partner, like it was a whole thing until I said, okay, I'm going to do this on my own and I'm going to choose the niche I originally wanted to do, which was ecom. So it took a while for me to actually decide on ecom in the end.
Got it. Tell me about some of those niches and tell me the story with the business partner. Because I think that's important for
So
people to learn.
yeah, so I mean, in terms of niches, it started out, I wanted to do restaurants because my parents own restaurants. Then I realized that it probably wasn't a good idea because it takes a lot of work for you to actually deliver to restaurants because they need a lot of customers to make up for your fees plus the ad spend and everything. So then we started going after gyms, which was basically the same thing, right? And a lot of people.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, what do people charge a lot for, right? That we can get leads through ads. So we went like the dentist, chiropractors, right? And to be honest, we never saw success on any niche. But I've realized now after actually being able to close some clients that it was all due to the simple things that actually mess people up, like being consistent with one thing over more than 2 weeks, right? Sticking to it for like 90 days and then just seeing what happens, right? Just relying or trusting the process that if you do it right for a long enough time, you'll get somewhere. And I think that was the only issue we had, right? We didn't stick enough to a niche. We niche hopped every month or so, right?
Got it.
So yeah.
And what happened with the business partner? Why did you start with the business partner and what happened?
Yeah, so we met in college. It was by chance, honestly. I think we were both starting an agency and we said, why not join up together, right? And yeah, we decided to join up together. We worked together for like 3 years trying to build the agency, but it wasn't working. And at some point, I just wasn't working, so we just decided let's part ways because together nothing's working out. So let's see what we can do on our own. But I honestly think I wouldn't. He was the type of person to be very what's the word, like very, like he had a very good work ethic, let's say, right? He was very urgent. He had a lot of urgency. Let's do this now. Let's go. And I was very patient, right? So I didn't have that thing in me that said, let's go now. Like I didn't care. Like I was able to wait and relax and be patient and just do things slowly. But I think from him, I learned that I need to sometimes be a little bit more urgent and push through. And I think I needed to go through that to be able to succeed in some way on my own, you know? So I think I still did benefit a lot. But if it's something important that I learned in terms of having a business partner, for people that are watching that might benefit from this, is that make sure you set the expectations of who's responsible for what early, like right away before you sign anything. Just say you're responsible for this and you're responsible for that. Because the biggest problem we had is that we were both doing the same thing all the time. Right. So it wasn't, it became a little bit of a mess, if I'm honest.
Got it.
Yeah.
I always tell people not to have a business partner with these type of businesses because first of all, there's a lot of overlap. Usually the people who start agencies are very overlapping skills. And also the other side of it is the whole point of these businesses is to have a lot of cash flow and high margins, right? Which is kind of eroded when you have a business partner. Right. But I want to go back to the niche because I think, every person has like their own story and different lessons that other people can take from it. I think the primary thing from you, at least, with working with you, is actually been your progression through niches. I find that the most interesting. So let's fast track that and say, okay, you go into the e-com space now. Did you have like any friends who are e-com owners or connections or any like social clouds, like anything going into it?
I did not. I think maybe I knew some people in e-com, but I didn't really tell them about it. Like I kept it to myself for a bit. So no, let's say no, I didn't. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I know that, through the program you joined and you were in e-com and you had a bunch of issues logistically with like operations and improving client results. That was the primary reason you joined. And I know that through that, you kind of scaled up and we solved all those problems. And then recently, I know we made the decision together for you to not be in e-com anymore and to shift to something else.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if you agree with my thoughts now that we've gone through this whole journey, because what I always tell people is it's not about the difficulty of the niche or even the competitiveness or any of these things. It's really just like, what do you have a competitive advantage in? Now, for me, my first agency was also in ecom, but that's because I had gone the dropshipping route. I had built a lot of connections. I'd got a lot of results. I had had a lot of my own case studies as testimonies. I'd spoken at Shopify events. I had my first 20 clients lined up before I actually did any outreach, right? And so today I would never recommend anyone to go into ecom because it's very competitive, very difficult to find the business owners. It's very difficult to sell them if you don't know what you're doing. It's like a terrible niche for a beginner. For me, even though I was a beginner agency owner, I still had a lot of competitive advantage, which is why it made sense for me. And that's been a discussion that we've had very recently, actually. So I'm curious, if you were to be able to speak to your younger self, would you have advised them to not go with ecom, or do you still think it was the right move?
So it depends on when I had started, right? If it had been my first niche and I had gone with it, and maybe I would have stuck with my drop shipping store just to get that experience and case study and whatever, then I would have definitely do it, because I mean, it falls with what you're saying, right? You have your own case studies and you have the proof that you know what you're doing. But if I did not have, if I wouldn't have anything, which like right now, then I wouldn't have, because it's honestly the biggest problem anyone will have with ecom, I believe, unless they have the network and the experience and all that, is going to be getting in front of the businesses, right? That's the biggest bottleneck I've had with the e-commerce agency. Like it's so hard to actually get in front of people and book a call. Once I was on the call, it's very easy for me. Not very easy to close them, but I closed most of the calls I've gotten on, right? But the issue is how many calls are you getting on, right? And it's been very difficult to actually book those calls.
Got it. I've found, have you noticed as well how the industry has shifted and changed over time? Because I remember when Esme was just starting, everyone was about, let's go sell to gyms and restaurants. That was like the two hottest niches everyone did. And then that kind of died. And then the next thing was, right, everyone, let's go sell to ecom and info. That seems to be what's happening. And I believe at the moment, we're just at that peak where everyone's realizing, just like they did realize with gyms and with restaurants, hey, this works for like maybe the 1 or 2 influencers that are shouting about it on YouTube. But honestly, for the other 99%, it doesn't work. And so I'm very curious to see what the like third wave is. I strongly believe it's going to be in high ticket consulting. And that's obviously what, you know, the new version of the program is all about, which is high tickets consulting, very boring businesses, very easy to find them, very easy to speak to them, very easy to sell them as kind of a level 1. And then you can up level to ecom or something else afterwards, which I know is what you've decided to do. But let's just fast track back when you joined the program. What revenue were you doing at the time? Just remind me.
So when I joined, I was at around 5K a month.
And how many clients was that?
That was three clients, I believe. Yeah, 3 clients.
Right. And if I remember correctly, back then you were doing all the service delivery yourself, right? Or did you have a contractor?
I had a contractor helping me.
Okay. And so your primary reason for joining, because everyone, as I said, has different reasons. Yours at that time wasn't lead flow, right? I think it was more operation service delivery results for clients. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I also know that you are in like a lot of programs in the online space, a lot of courses, consultants. So I'm curious, like, what have you noticed the biggest difference working with me and our program is compared to the others? Because I think it'd be quite beneficial for others to hear.
So definitely, like you're a very smart individual, and you know how to explain things very clearly, right? Whenever I have a question or anything, like you know exactly what to say and how to say it, and I know like it's very easy for me to take the next step because I know what to do next, right? You're very good at analyzing of what a problem is, isolating it, and saying, okay, this is your problem, fix this is how you fix it. That's, I think, that's probably one of the biggest things I've noticed in your program than compared to others, right?
Got it. So more the one-to-one problem solving solution, like the collaboration versus just the recorded content stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, the recorder is also quite good, right? Like you have what was system alchemy, right? That like that one that really helps you understand what you're trying to do for your customer, like really helps you on, like the content is very good as well. I wouldn't say it's not a big part of the program. I guess with what my problems were, with what I had to fix personally, I gained more value from the calls because I guess they were more specific problems, if you would call it that.
Got it. And so I know one of our biggest things has been how you can bring on like a high ticket and high quality consultant who can like run and do a lot of your media buying. I know that was one of the problems we solved early on. And then I know you had a lot of questions that we worked together on as far as like culture, having calls, hiring, firing, instilling all of that. And then building systems around actually delivering results for clients in a repeatable fashion, and then creating dashboards and reporting. So how have you found going from where you were doing a lot of the service delivery yourself to now having a team doing it for you and having those systems in place? Like, how have you found the difference?
So there's pros and cons, I'd say. It's a lot better because I don't have to be on ad accounts all day and just trying to figure out, okay, what to do next. I could say someone, you take ownership of this part of the business, just you're responsible. And if you need help, let me know. And I'm here to support you and make sure we make the right decisions. But now I can focus more on what's acquiring new clients or trying some new things for the agency, you know? So I mean, that's the biggest part about hiring someone, right? Just delegating some work that can be done by someone else that may be even better than you.
Got it. And what about the company culture? Because I think one of the biggest problems that I've seen in this space is people hire contractors and then they treat them like contractors, which means they have like a job proposal or something running with them through like Upwork, which is how they're paying them. They have no team calls, no collaboration calls, like nothing. They also usually expect this person to build everything themselves. Like the philosophy that I've always had is your job is to create the system for them to operate within. So I know one of the big things that you took from me was our spreadsheets for how we track client results, manage them, systemize it, because you're supposed to give a box for the contractor to play in. You're not supposed to just let them do their own thing, because then it leads to chaos and uncertainty, and also having calls, building culture. So how have you found those plug and play systems kind of shortcutting having to build a lot of it yourself? Because I know you have a lot of ads experience. A lot of people coming into this don't have the actual ad knowledge yourself. And so did you find that the contractors behaved very well with that, or did you find that they kind of wanted to go and do their own thing?
So I would say it was a mix of both, right? I basically took the sheets, the plug and plays, and I introduced them. We started using those, but then I would always ask, do you think something here would be better for you and how you work? Because I didn't want to just force them to fit somewhere. I wanted to kind of make sure it worked their own way of doing things, right? Because then if I do that, then they may work better, right? Do things better. So I always try to ask them, what do you think would be better here for your own experience? And I would listen to that and sometimes implement and sometimes not if it didn't really make sense, right? But I just try to make sure that it would work well for them as well.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so the final conversation that I want to have is you scaled the e-com up to, I think it was like 9K per month, right?
Yeah.
And then decided, hang on, I'm going to change niches based on the conversations and the calls that we've been having as a community.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because I know it's very sudden as a change to you, and you've gone through a lot of niches. So walk me through kind of, I know my philosophy around why I would recommend it, but, and I know that I shared that with you, but how did you make the mental decision?
So it's about, I mean, looking back, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago about my past experiences in the agency, right? Like the dentist, chiropractor, that type of thing. And I believe the biggest issue was the consistency. We were not consistent in outreach and doing things that we needed to do. So maybe if we had been, we might have had a successful agency in those niches, and we'd be doing a lot better now, right? Now, the reason I wanted to, my thought process behind changing is, first of all, the point I said before, it's very difficult to get in front of e-com founders. It's very difficult, right? Because there's a ton of agencies offering those services. And some people have the leverage of having a network or past results or whatever it is. Others don't. So that's the number one issue, right? Like you need to get in front of people. And it's been very difficult to get in front of e-commerce founders. Number two is the backend stuff. It's like e-commerce is very, I guess, complex is the right word, right? Because something you mentioned is that you can't, like you have to make a new game plan for each new client, which is completely true. You can't just say, okay, let's copy paste this thing into here and it'll work, because different industry, different pain points, like it's it's very different. So every time that you sign a client, you're running and saying, okay, how do we set this client up? How should we run the ads? What ads should we run? What copy should we write? This like it, and it's all very messy, right? So I just
Yeah.
thought, okay, it would be a lot better if I could, first of all, have it easier to get in front of the business owners, right? Because I could send maybe a cold email or reach out to them on Instagram or Facebook, and they're not as sophisticated in the market, right? So they're not going to assume things that are negative, right? They might say, oh, these guys maybe trying to help me out or whatever it is, right? So they're not as sophisticated. So it makes it easier for me to get in front of them. And then the back end, I can literally just duplicate a template for each and every client that I have in the future. So yeah, like it's kind of a no-brainer, right? If I had a lot of clients in the e-com and a lot of experience, and it's a different story. But like this, I think this makes more sense in terms of the goals that I have for my life and all that, right?
Yeah. And that's the whole message behind the program. That's why I wanted to bring you on and wanted to have this chat with you, because aside from me just saying it, and I wanted to show someone else who's actually gone through it and arrived at the same conclusion. Because what I've always said is, when you start an agency, you're not falling in love with a niche, you're falling in love with an agency, right?
Yeah.
If you are falling in love with the niche, in other words, you fall in love with the e-com niche, rather go start an e-com company, right? Go dropship or something. Don't build an agency in the space, right? But if you fall in love with an agency, the things that you're falling in love with is client acquisition, scalability, systems, operations, and making as much money as possible. And the whole point of agency Clockwork is exactly that, because I've run both types of agencies and kind of came to the same conclusion. And I think a lot of people underestimate with ecom, probably because they don't get enough clients to arrive at that conclusion. But when you have, 20, 30 clients at scale, every single one of them is almost like its own little thing, because it requires a lot of customization. And you said it's different targeting, different products, different space, different everything. And so I genuinely think that with ecom, you need incredibly bright talent, because you need people in the business who can literally make game plans and execute on that and communicate it across to the client at a high level for each of their individual products, niches, and services. The problem is that type of talent is A, very expensive, and B, a lot of them are already trying to start their own agency. So why would they work for others, especially if you're not, really, really big? And so that's kind of the big thing. And that's what I ran into with my previous agency as well, is the issue of scalability. With every time there was a client that there was a problem, I had to get involved and kind of leverage my experience, which is fine. It's just not scalable. And then I've obviously, through the program, we work with so many different niches and services. And I've always been envious of these agencies which have like a go high level back end, and they onboard a client and they press copy and they have their whole stuff done. And that's kind of what I've been building now with the second one. And that's kind of why I've arrived at, we want to build an agency that runs like clockwork. It's systemizable, it's copy and paste, it runs, it's consistent, doesn't require a lot of overhead, very easy to scale. And just like you said, I speak to so many people every day that are, thinking of joining the program or not, or whatever. And they're trying to sell Facebook ads to e-com owners. And I always laugh at them, because 9 out of 10 times the e-com owner probably knows more about Facebook ads than them in the first place, because they just like saw it through a course. So how did you find that as an experience? Like a lot of the e-com owners that you were speaking to when you're trying to sell them, what would you say their level of like knowledge on all of this was?
It would be between intermediate to advanced, I would say. I don't think there were any beginners. Maybe there was one who was a beginner because he had just bought up the business and just say, I want to scale this up. So he didn't know much about ads, but he needed someone to help him run the ads. So that was like a one-off. Like it wasn't like, I didn't see that consistently, right? Only one guy that was a beginner in terms of ads, but everyone else had an intermediate to advanced knowledge, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the clients that you were signing, like what was the revenue level that they were doing?
So they were, I would say the lowest was like 10K a month. The lowest, the highest I worked with was about 40K a month, right? So they were still pretty small businesses.
Got it. And the 40K per month one, I would assume he had the most experience out of all the others, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what I've seen, working in the space for a long time now, is as soon as you try and get those high ticket e-com clients, usually the owners of those brands know a lot about paid ads, because that's obviously how they got the brand to that level. And so if you walk in there with no experience, it's going to be difficult to sell, because they're going to ask very
Yeah.
hard questions.
Yeah.
Cool. Final thoughts before we wrap this up, because I know we have some other things to touch on. What would you say to anyone else who is thinking of starting an agency or thinking of choosing a niche? Because that's where most people get stuck, is what niche and what service should I offer?
If you're thinking about starting an agency, well, if you're committed to it, do it. If you're kind of like not sure, I'll see, like I'm gonna try a few things out, and don't do it because you're not gonna succeed. Just make sure you're committed to it and making it work. And in terms of the niche, number one, think about what experience you may have if your parents are in a business, if your uncle owns a business, if you know something about a certain industry, right? If you do, go with that as long as the results you provide are high value, right? Then go for a niche that is easily systemizable, right? Like Courtney was saying, high paid consultants. How is it that you call it? High value consultants?
Yeah. So the mental model that I always give for people with this is, my thought process now is that you just have to check off a couple of things. First, you have to make sure that these people are not sophisticated buyers, right? And it also depends on like your skill, but like if we're talking to a beginner, like they should be unsophisticated buyers. So they're not going to ask you like, how are you circumventing the iOS 14 ad restrictions,
Yeah.
blah, 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 right? They're not going to throw you those
Yeah.
questions. So unsophisticated buyers, whatever they're selling needs to be more than $500, right? So not like a gym or a restaurant where it's like $20 order. The reason for that is because let's say your minimum fee that you should be charging is probably about $2,000 a month. Really, you only have to sell 4 units to break even on your fee plus a bit of ad spend. So you want to make it easier for yourself. And that also eliminates like all the niches that are bad ideas, right?
Yeah.
So $500 per month. It needs to be a service that is in demand and searchable. So the thing that also people underestimate with e-com and these other niches is you as the marketing agency have to generate demand. So if people don't know about your product, you have to generate it. And the way that you do that is through creative. The problem is creative, which is a whole nother ball game, is very difficult to execute on, right?
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. So never mind the paid media side, the creative stuff also comes into play. So you want to choose services that are already in demand. For example, like if I want to install a new roof on my house, right? If you show me a business who is going to install a roof on my house at a decent price and I already wanted it, I'm going to be easy to convert, right? You don't have to generate demand for that service. And then the final thing is it should be easy to find prospects. The issue with e-com owners is, as you mentioned, it's hard to find them because it's not like they're running around on LinkedIn, blaring that they're an e-com owner. So it's hard to find them and then even harder to get in front of them. Whereas a lot of these service providers, especially the high ticket ones, are actively trying to put themselves out there, which makes it easy to A, find them, but B, when you actually reach out to them, you'll get a response. Whereas e-com owners are actively trying to avoid being seen because they get a million emails from people trying to sell them stuff. So very, very different polar ends of it. And then, as you said, with these high ticket businesses, usually each one, no matter where they are, the process of delivery is the same. It's not like e-com or info where you have to do like a whole strategy session for each and every single client. That's kind of the mental model that I go through. Does that like summarize
that makes
what
a
I
lot
think
of
you were getting to?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Right, Henry. Well, I'm really excited for this new agency in this new niche. I don't think we've decided yet what it's going to be, but I'm hoping we'll bring you back on in a couple months when you build a second agency in a different niche, 10, 20 times bigger. And cool. Anything else?
No, if anyone is on the fence about joining an agency Clockwork, I would definitely recommend it, right? As long as you're going to implement what you're told, it's a no-brainer.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Cool.
For sure.